So, well, hello again to everybody. I want first to apologize for two reasons. As Albert, English is not my native language, so I hope I won't be too much mistaken in some words I might use. And secondly, because it's very late, and I'm sorry because there was no time for questions and I had so many questions also to ask you. And so if you can keep, even if you're very tired and very hungry, some minutes of attention to that presentation. So, second, I want to thank the Diasporic Literary Archives Network for their kind invitation to take part. It's the second time for me to their workshop. I wanted to say that while I was listening yesterday to the presentations, I first had the feeling that the paper I had presented last year on Martinican writers would have matched better with the general topic, which was about the politics of location. Because it may seem strange to talk about something as virtual as the World Wide Web and web portals when we're about location, just as we know how odd it is to associate friendship with Facebook, for instance. But, well, I'm serious, and what I will try to do is to highlight how Caribbean initiatives about ICT and archival material may bring a renewed approach, if of course not the only one, to the issue of aspect to diasporic, or rather delocated, scattered, or poorly accessible documentary heritage. So to do so, I will rely on my experience, my two experiences, that of president of Carbica and manager of the Megan project, and that of the head of Archives départementales of Martinique, and on two examples of ongoing projects. So, which is this one. So, on two case studies, I would say on two different scales, to see what directions can be taken. So an island scale, which is the Banque Numérique des Patrimoines Martiniquais, and a Caribbean scale, which is the Megan Project, an initiative led by Carbica, which is the branch of the International Council of Archives, and which exists as an association with about 30 members. So I will first give you some elements of context and major stakes. I will browse very quickly because most of them were addressed yesterday in the presentations of the first panelists. Then a short focus on these two web portals. So I'm sorry, I will first start with the Megan project, then with the Banque Numérique des Patrimoines, and see to finish, so how they can respond to the issue of diasporic archives and show some practical examples. So let's go to the next, the Caribbean context. So, there. So as you all know, of course, our context is that of that fragmented geography in islands and territories and separate linguistic areas, of course, due to the colonial history and the difficulty to access to our historical heritage, because a large and important part of it is kept in the former metropoles, so in the UK, Spain, Netherlands, or France, for instance. The poor condition of local archives, and well, the presentation of Cheryl earlier this morning, of course, there's no more to say about it. Although, of course, we cannot compare everything, and there are really differences from a territory to another. But our institutions are, most of them, very recent and small and often isolated, and Carbica is one of the organization which aims at, making more, gathering between us, and to have the archivists in the different islands less isolated in their professional practices. And this is mostly due to poor governmental concern for the documentary heritage. Next. But we also have, of course, the object, the topic, which is the common Caribbean history, although we all have our own peculiarities, which is, of course, well, I won't go through, you can read, sorry, but I think, okay, we can. What I want to stress here is that there are two trends which we must consider now, that of a political claim for more Caribbean integrations through the different organizations that exist, as the Organization of Caribbean States, the grouping of smaller islands in the OECS, and the CARICOM. And a strong trend for the use of ICTs for improving that regional integration. And I quote here a declaration of the current Secretary General of CARICOM, stating that the new frontier for Caribbean integration is ICTs. And of course, when we think of our project of web portal, we think that this is the moment to put it forward. Another point to stress is the increasing demand, public demand for the recovery of the past, and I will also refer to what Cheryl said about Grenadian archives. And I also want to tell you that CARICOM this month, the heads of government met and they made a statement saying that they prepared a plan which comprised the establishment of Caribbean cultural institutions through which the Caribbean experience could be scientifically told, and this is one of the part of their plan for reparations for native genocide and slavery. So there is a context which pulls towards, the taking of account of this historical documentary heritage. Okay. So the stakes for us archivists would be, how can we build capacity through cooperation to strengthen our archival institutions? How can we relocate without locking access? Because the idea of repatriation, which has been, started to be debate yesterday, relocation, when it means, that you displace the archives to another, how can you continue to give a large access to these documents? So this is really a concern we have to have. And how can we encourage historical research within the Caribbean? And finally, for the wider, for the population we serve, so how we can contribute to the reinforcement of our multi-layered identity. And I want to stress that multi-layered, of course, definition of what identity is for us Caribbean people. So now I show how the Caribbean Migrant Project wants to be, how we can address these stakes and these questions. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so the Migrant Project, which acronyms is Memory of the Islands, although it's not only islands, because Suriname is a part of the project, for instance. So aims to be a network to share the common memory of the Caribbean people. So sharing it and that memory is not only the material traces of that memory we have in our own, institutions, but also to be in capacity of also going to the records which are kept outside our region and have them shared in a way. So we wanted first to federate ourselves, and to do so, we needed a number of objectives and of steps. For that, we have had some support, and of course that of the International Council on Archives. But I must stress, and in particular, the support we have from the different governments which are part of the project. Well, the archival institution, because most of them are national archives, part of the project. So some part of the support they gave to us, and also a support we could have from the European Union through the Cooperation Fund, which is the Interreg Fund. And this is something, of course, which is very helpful, because it's a way of getting a substantial amount of money, and this comes from the fact that we have French territories in the region, and these French territories, it is aimed that they go towards more relationships with their Caribbean environment. So the European Union dedicated a fund to encourage this integration. Okay. So the scope of the project is to set up a web portal in which we would access information about all the archival institutions which are members of CARBICA. That is about 30 of them. So to create a directory where we would have rather detailed information on our institutions with information as their opening hours, their history, their mandate, and a general description of their holdings. And then second part of the portal is to have information about the collections. So this is in two parts. So the information on the collections through finding aids or general lists that would be put online, but also if some of the collections are digitized, and if the program can support that digitization, then to have also some digital images online. Of course, this was impossible to, even if we are only a few partners, to aim at putting all the finding aids and all the collections online. But we have identified the topics which were of main common interest, such as slavery, migration, the history of the sugar industry, and what was about our different colonial rules, and of course things that are very, very often requested by the public, such as family history or visual documents that we would prioritize as documents to put online. So of course the issue of literary archives didn't come up first, but I think such a project, must be fed by all the possibilities and all the production from the research. So as far as there is information available which can be organized and structured, why not imagine putting information on that? Because the tool will be there. So to do so, we had to set up, and we were aware that one of our major challenges was to have an homogeneous way of processing things, and so we definitely needed training. So if the outcomes are, having information about the collections available on the web portal, we had to have a full program of capacity building about standards, description standards for the archives, and also about digitization, and all that is about, the process from having archives described properly and having them put online. So we can go to next. Well, the benefits for our audience, of course, we can see the better access to the information. But also, what we don't forget is that we can benefit also from that audience we have of researchers, and we definitely need that community to help us develop the program and to advocate for it. And you see, network to identify private and endangered archives too. So what makes Megan special? It's because it has been designed from a Caribbean point of view. So we are all aware that there were initiatives to put online huge digital libraries and digital archives from main institutions, which in the north, in France, in the UK, in the US, etc., and where they have very important Caribbean collections. But we wanted, to have, from our own point of view, a way of proposing something that could network with what would be available in these big repositories, online repositories. And also, it's not a digital library; it's a digital. It's an archives portal. So we saw that we needed to have our own tools, respectful of the standards which are implemented these past years in the international archival community. So the situation now is that we have organized 5 training sessions, such as the management of digitization project, the use of the standards for description, and we organized them in French and in English. And so I made a small count. We still have 1 to organize. We had 5. The last was in Suriname. 5 trainings, which total 265 days per person for members from 12 different countries. I didn't mention that we are 7 partners which have agreed formally to participate, but of course it's open to other partners, and our trainings are open to other Carabica members. So we have a test portal, which was launched 2 years ago, using a software which is an open source software, ICA Atom, which was developed on the instigation of the ICA, and which is completely compliant with the standards. So that was very useful. And I'm happy to see that the trainings that were organized have been followed in some countries, because, for instance, Curaçao has installed its own instance of ICA Atom, and they have started their descriptions on that. I know Jamaica is on the process. We are in contact. So we already have a few descriptions of national institutions, here, not only national institutions, but this is what is the list to access the directory. So as an example, but if you want to see more, you can visit the website. So our challenge is to keep the timeline, because it's supposed to be finished at the end of the year, but we'll need 1 more year to go up to what we had decided to go. But as I said, we can see now the progress among the partners. And one issue which hasn't been addressed at all for the moment is how to link this to the European colonial funds, which are already put online. Now, the second project, so it's for Martinique, Banque des Patrimoines Martiniquais. It was launched in 2010. The specific aspects of that portal it's not an archival portal, it's a cultural heritage portal. So it includes information about built heritage, museums, library and archives collections. And it's backed by a GIS, which is the Sigma. So, for instance, this is the home page, and you see the stylized map of Martinique. When you click on that, you can search directly through the map. And there you have above the different categories of material which is available. So things for genealogical research, état civil, iconography, visual documents, built heritage, even archaeology, because we have objects also available. So, the assets and challenges of that project is that, of course, we got substantial financial support from the French Ministry of Culture and from the European Union also. This project is a very wide project because we tried to satisfy the demand of very, very diverse public, because, satisfying the demand of researchers is not at all the same as, school children and teachers and, the educational community and the wider public, for instance, with the search with family history, which has become really a very, very important demand for archives now. So our concerns also was to deal with very different metadata sets, and to do that with the same staff. So we had to integrate the activity of production for that web portal in our current activity. So that was quite a challenge. But now we see how we could respond to the issue of that scattered archives. So I say multilateral or bilateral. Of course, these 2 examples from the Megan project, which is a multilateral initiative, and the Banque Numérique des Patrimoines Martiniquais, which is a collaborative project with many partners also, but which has more bilateral relations with, of course, metropolitan France. So I think, these two ways of addressing the questions are valid. They have, well, they are more or less easy to follow, and of course, because the situation is contrasted, because what we know, there is a strong cooperation due to the geopolitical situations. For instance, between Martinique, the French territories in the Caribbean, with the government and national institutions, and the Dutch-speaking islands also have agreements, strong political agreements also in the cultural field. So there are commitments, and these commitments are much, much looser between the English-speaking Caribbean and the United Kingdom. So the issue of sharing that heritage is not in the same terms. Then, I would like to show two examples of what we could achieve through the Banque Numérique des Patrimoines Martiniquais as virtual relocations, and show, even if we are in a good context for Martinique, it's not easy. So these two examples is that of sharing primary sources, so things that would, interest first researchers, and another way of doing things, which is, valorizing our own way the documentary heritage, and that in a much more educational, I would say, perspective. So I show first, so what we try to do by cooperation. So next, please. So this is a mapping, kind of ecology of our own web portal, so the Banque Numérique, in the different web portal initiatives that exist. So the three columns are one, the Caribbean axis, the other French national, and the European integration. So we see in the second map how these relations can build regarding the different fields of interest of the Banque Numérique des Patrimoines Martiniquais. You have the intangible cultural heritage, the library and, prints, archives, built heritage, archaeology, and educational resources. And we see how they can link with the different portals that already exist or are about to exist. I didn't mention Manioc, for instance, which is a digital library launched and maintained by the Université des Antilles et de la Guyane. Gallica, which is the digital library of the French National Library of France. DLOC, which was mentioned yesterday, the digital library of the Caribbean, maintained by the University of Florida, but also the Megan project here for archives, and the big databases, online database of the French Ministry of Culture, such as Collection or Histoire des Arts, or else Généalogie. There. Okay, so the challenges of interoperability, which is something we will have to address with Megan at a second stage, and which we have to face already with the Banque Numérique des Patrimoines Martiniquais, and which we have experienced, for instance, with the BNF, the French National Library, because we have signed a partnership agreement with them. So that we could, access the material they have on Gallica, the digital library. But actually, that needs, even if we have same technical basis and we have the same protocol to harvest and to expose our data, in fact, they cannot provide the full set. We have to identify one by one, so that's quite a lot of work to do. With the French National Overseas Archives, they say, okay, they authorized, but actually, as they had their own roadmap for their finding it and for their digitization, the collections we were interested in were not on the roadmap, so we had to pay for the digitization. So that's a cooperation at a fee. And now we're about to work with the French National Institute of Audiovisual. And as the Bibliothèque Nationale, of course, these are very big institutions and we are a small one. When we see in that scales, you know, so they also have their own roadmaps. And so we always have to identify what would be the, you know, the smallest common divider, I don't know how you call that, so that denominator on which we can build that cooperation agreement. So that's what we try to do. So that requires quite a lot of imagination and also to see all the levels, you know, technical and not only legal, also aspects of the question. So next. So next, please. Okay. So out of that broad perspective, which we have to follow, however, but which requires quite many steps, we have tried to do something which is much more simple. We have implemented last year because it was the Césaire year. Of course, Martinique then was very involved in that commemoration. We created a resource which is à la une, which is a kind of a highlight of documents that are kept in different institutions. And for that, we could have access to documents about Césaire, which were kept in our own, and we shared, you know, what we have and people wouldn't know, and what may be well known, but are not as accessible as one would think. And for instance, we had the permission to publish online the manuscript of the Cahier d'un retour au pays natal, so the major work by Césaire, which is online, and we made our own small comment of the work. So this is something where we can master most of it, but also have something really mixed and shared. So that was something not too complicated to do. So that's on. So this is it. And every month there was a new document about political, literary, etc. So I will finish on that. Well, you know how we can, you know, go to a smaller and smaller scale and still be able to do something. So that's an optimistic note to conclude. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Dominique for a dazzling presentation which achieved the objective of holding your pre-lunch audience brilliantly. Well done. Clearly we need to set aside some quality time for a proper discussion of the issues that have just been raised on archives at risk, on portals and the way that they bring archival information together. I'm going to suggest that we don't do that through questions and contributions now, but break for lunch. During lunch, the organisers need to talk about how we combine the requirements of a full afternoon session with all the issues that have been raised and how we talk through making sure that we do justice to the major points that have been raised in that session. Can we try to get back from lunch as close to 2 o'clock as we can manage? And during the lunch break, we'll try to work out a viable afternoon session for you. Thank you.